Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome back. So we are in the first chapter of the first canto, Questions by the Sages. The sages, headed by Shaunaka Rishi, have glorified Suta Goswami as being the most perfectly qualified to answer their questions. These sages have gathered to perform 1,000-year sacrifice for the benefit of humanity. And now, seeing Suta Goswami, they are offering sincere prayers. They have praised Suta Goswami, they have glorified him, and now they are going to present to him their 6 questions, which will be answered in the second and third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But what are these 6 questions and why are they asking these 6 questions is also important. Srimad Bhagavatam is an entire journey of questions and answers. Right from the beginning till the last end of Bhagavatam, there are only questions and answers. So let us see how the questions begin. Text number 9, please respond. Tatra tatranjasa yushman bhavataya dvinishchitam pumsamekantatah shreyas tanna samsitum arhasi.
Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general.
So this is the question number 1. What is the ultimate good for all the people in general? See, we all want to know what is best for me. People come to us and say, Prabhuji, what do you think I should do that will be best for me? What do you think that will make me very happy? What is that one thing if I do, I'll be completely happy? Isn't it? We all want to know that one secret. So this is a natural question, but very important here. They're not asking for themselves. They're asking for the people in general. See, the difference between a spiritual person and a materialistic person is, a materialistic person only thinks about himself. A spiritual person is compassionate. One who's connected to Krishna, he actually feels compassion. So out of compassion, he wants everybody to be happy. Sarve jana sukhino bhavantu. Everybody should be happy. Because he considers Vasudeva Kutumbakam. He considers this whole world to be his family. And because he feels the pain of people, so therefore these devotees want to know from Suta Goswami that what is that one thing that will make everyone happy? What is best for everyone in this world? And especially why they're asking this question? Because they know that now the age that is going to begin is going to be a very terrible age. That is why they're asking this question. Why they ask this first question? The reason for that is revealed in the next verse, text number 10. They're giving the reason why they're asking this question. Please repeat. Prayenalpayusha sabhya Prayenalpayusha sabhya Kalav asmin yuge jana Manda sumanda matayo Manda bhagya upadruta.
O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed.
So this is the reason why they are asking this question. And see, look at this. Even academic scholars, those who are not devotees, even they accept that Srimad Bhagavatam, see, we say Bhagavatam is, 5,000 years old. That is what the scriptures say. But there are modern scholars who don't believe in Vedas, who don't believe in the spiritual aspects of the scriptures. They give material dates. So they say, at least even they have admitted that this book is at least 2,000 years old. So that means even if we assume it was 2,000 years old, They knew that they are predicting the behavior of people in 2020. They knew what the age is going to come. And look at their wisdom. They are actually saying how the life is going to be. Prayana alpa ayusha. First thing is alpa ayusha means lifespan will be short. Now you may say medical science has proven that lifespan has increased. See, we have to see qualitative life. You can't see just because statistically they are proving that people live long lives doesn't mean people are actually living a healthy long life. See, we had one devotee I know who is 35 years old from one of our satellite centers in Goa. Last year he died of a massive cardiac arrest. Just 3 days back, a very prominent cricket player from the Saurashtra Ranji Trophy team, he died of a cardiac arrest. He was 24 years old. How do you explain this? So, alpa ayusha is a reality. Short life is a reality. Okay, even within the last 100 years, we can see how lifespan has drastically reduced. Like people who lived a natural and healthy life, they lived longer lives. Like I'll give a simple example. Few years back, we went to Mayapur for a yatra. And we went in a train because I was preaching to a certain section of people. One of my very close friends, he brought his grandfather for the yatra. And his grandfather is 90, now he's no more, but he was 94 years old when he came for the yatra. Believe me, I've seen this live with my own eyes. From Naigaon, they took a local train and came to Dadar early morning, the 4:30, there is a local train, which is the first train from Virar. They came to Churchgate. They took a taxi and came to VT CST station. They took the Gitanjali Express, the morning Gitanjali Express, which leaves at 6 o'clock. And they traveled in the second class compartment. And they reached next day Kolkata in the afternoon. And this Dadaji was there in the train, sitting like this, the entire journey, taking prasad, walking to the toilet on his own, in the train. And then from Kolkata, they took a vehicle, all the devotees were there. He came to Mayapur. Evening, we reached Mayapur late because of the traffic jam and all of that. So basically, he traveled almost 38 hours, more than 40 hours almost they traveled. And next day morning, 4:30, he was the first one to come for Mangalarati. And he was standing right in the front like this. And I was looking at him and I said, wow. And so, of course, 2 years back, he left his body. At the age of 98, he left this world. Very peacefully, he left this world, telling all his family members that I'm leaving now. Bye-bye. All of you come. So anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is, even in our own lifetime, we have seen people, and because he lived his entire life in Rajasthan, in a village, tough life, eating pure ghee, eating good quality food, natural food, and lived a hardworking life. So he's been healthy. So even in our lifetime, we can see how times have deteriorated. Now we Mumbai Palas, we can't guarantee our life would be like that. Even if we live till 94, we would be filled, our life would be filled with so many medicines. You know? So youth, what is that saying? If youth knew and if age could, you know, youth, the regret in youth is we don't know. By the time we know, we are old enough and we can't. So that's a problem. You know, when we are young, we have the time. We also have the money. No, we don't have money. We have time and we have ability, right, with us. But we don't have the money. As we grow older, we have money and we have ability, but we don't have time because we are earning for our families and all of that. And then when we get old, we have time also and we have money also, but we have no ability to perform devotional service. So Alpa Ayusha is a reality. So therefore, Bhagavatam is very powerful. See, the sages knew by their divine vision. See, there is what we call intuition. There is also these sages, because of their spiritual practices, they have this divine vision. They can see what's going to happen. So if you read the Bhagavatam 12th canto, you will be surprised by the predictions made for Kali Yuga. like Dampatya Biruchir Hetuhu. The marriage system of Kali Yuga is described in the Bhagavatam. How people will get married only for convenience, Lavanya Keshadaranam. How women will, it explained in the Bhagavatam how women will have shorter hair and men will grow long hair. So all those kind of, the idiosyncrasies and the quirks of human society has been explained in the Bhagavatam very beautifully, actually. It's quite alarming, but it's impressive to know that the sages knew what's going to happen. So they are saying, Prayana Alpa Ayusha, Kalau Asmin Yugejana, Manda. Manda means they will be lazy. Lazy for what? You will see people are hardworking now, but they're lazy for spiritual practices. If you see, the proof is now, thanks to the smartphone, we are busy binge watching the whole time. So many web series and OTT, on the OTT platform, you have so much to watch that people have become lazy for spiritual practices. They will not get up at 4:30 in the morning to come to temple, but they'll get up if there is a live cricket match or IPL match. So we have become, our spiritual lives have been compromised. So that's what Manda means. And Sumanda means misguided. Some people are actually sincere. They may want to know spiritual life, but unfortunately they get misguided by, so many cheating leaders of religion. So, and some of them, they're not only misguided, Manda Bhagya, they're simply unlucky. They are purely unlucky and Upadhrita. Upadhrita means they're constantly misguided. Sorry, Upadhrita means disturbed. I'm sorry. They're constantly disturbed. People are always worrying, I know somebody who's so much a worrier that one day he was worrying that he has nothing to worry. Because he was saying, my life is, I can't believe how can I be so peaceful? Because that has become a conditioning to worry. The Patanjali's Yoga Sutra explains the 5 stages of the mind. So if we know these stages of the mind, we can actually separate ourselves from our mind and we can see, wait, my mind is right now in one of these stages. And we can actually correct ourselves. But people don't want to hear Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. People don't want to come out of this disturbed condition. And the highest stage, the Yoga Sutra explains, is Nirodha. Nirodha means a stage of the mind which is completely equipoised, we're not at that level now. So we don't need to talk about it. But the lowest condition is called Kshipta. Kshipta is when the mind is like, how it is disturbed, the mind is like never steady. Have you experienced this? That sometimes we are doing something, after 5 seconds, we want to do something else. The mind is not satisfied with anything. The mind wants to keep changing. And the only satisfaction it derives is in the change. Like you're watching some television channel, in 2 seconds, you want to change the channel. Then you want to get up and check Facebook. Then you want to check WhatsApp. Then you want to call a friend. Kshipta means the mind which is completely restless. All of us go through that stage sometime or the other. Sometimes some of us are always in that stage. So the Yoga Sutra says, this is Kshipta, very, very normal in this material world. But if we want to become peaceful, we have to rise from this. This is a very low condition. There's another stage of the mind which is also unfavorable for spiritual life. That is called Mudha. Mudha means a drowsy, stupor, sleepy condition. Means always, tamoguna, not interested, feeling drowsy, like, sitting in front of the TV or the electronic screen like a couch potato, eating wafers, inactive, feeling lethargic, depressed, not feeling inclined to do anything, negativity. You know what I'm saying? This is tamoguna. This is also very common. And the third stage, which is also unfavorable for spiritual life, that is called vikshipta. Vikshipta means there is a lot of concentration, there is a lot of activity, but that's all in the mode of passion, which means there is no peace of mind. It's like, somebody may watch 6 hours of intense cricket match on the TV. So there is concentration there. So you may think, wow, he's concentrated, his mind is focused. That focus is in the mode of passion. That cannot make the mind peaceful. So the mind can be peaceful only if we are in the 4th stage of the mind, which is called Ekagrita, where we involve sattva practices, which means where we are happy with the condition that is right now. We love what is. We are not in a hurry to change the situation. Practically, what it means is, if you don't look at the watch now and you are ready to allow this class to go on forever, I won't do that. But obviously, that attitude of, okay, when we are time conscious, constantly looking at the watch, then we are disturbed. It may be concentration, it may be, you may be efficient, you may be getting a lot of results, you may be getting a lot of things done, but it is not conducive for happiness, because it is vikshipta, which is a passionate stage. So kshipta, muda and vikshipta are totally unconducive for a spiritual life. Only when we come to ekagrita stage, which is a stage of peace. I don't know if you've experienced this. Sometimes you suddenly feel peaceful, like you feel, अच्छा चल रहा है life में, ऐसे आराम से बैठे हैं. For a few seconds, you're peaceful. But because you are conditioned to be in the vikshipta stage, your mind is conditioned to be in the vikshipta stage, even when you feel peaceful, you get disturbed that you're peaceful. You think, how can I be so? I have to be doing something. I have to be doing. But we are not human doing. We are supposed to be human being. We are constantly doing. So what happens is, because of all of this, we get disturbed. Disturbance is because of inability to be peaceful in a given situation. Like sometimes I go in front of the deities in the temple hall, I sit in front of the deities and I pray or I stand. But I'm looking at the watch. And then I catch myself, hey, what? This is the perfection of life. Whatever I've been doing the last 24 hours is so that I can come in front of the Lord. If I'm here also looking at the watch, that means there is something fundamentally wrong with me. So we have to spend some time in a day where time doesn't matter. And that has to be not in the mode of passion. You can't say, yes, Prabhuji, I'm latest Amazon, a Netflix series, I'm watching that. I don't see the time. One boy told me he watched 12 hours of some web series when he was telling me, Prabhuji, 12 hours I saw binge watching, 12 hours. And he was regretful. He said, how do I overcome it? So I asked him a simple question. I said, why did you think you watched 12 hours? He said, because when the episode ended, it ended in such a way that it was like a mystery. I wanted to know what's happening next. So I automatically saw the next episode. So I told him a simple solution, and he tried it next time. And now he watches only 2 hours in a week. And this technique which I gave him really helped him. I gave him a simple technique. I said, okay, so you watch the next episode. So that mystery which was created at the end of the first episode, when is that mystery answered in the next episode? He said that mystery is answered in the first 10 or 15 minutes. He said, as soon as that mystery is answered, stop. Stop. And then you watch it in your next weekly quota, whenever you have the quota for watching. And it worked. So what I'm trying to say is, we are living at a time of massive distractions. And these distractions are designed in such a way that we won't be peaceful. But if you want to be peaceful, see, just imagine spending that much time in nature. Like you go to Hanging Garden or go to some seashore, sit on the beach, look at the waves, look at nature, and you will connect to something eternal. You'll enter a space of peace. So therefore, these sages knew that as Kali Yuga will progress, people will not be peaceful. They'll always be jumping from one topic to the next. They'll always be restless. And sometimes, those who are in Vikshipta stage, they think they're doing spiritual life. They're very intense, but that intensity is not giving them peace. That is, externally, they're achieving a lot of things, but that intensity is making them disturbed, and it disturbs others also. Intensity without sensitivity will lead to insanity. Like we were going in a train once for a yatra, where 4 of us chanting Hare Krishna in the train, early morning, japa, 6 o'clock, Hare Krishna. So we were 6, there are 6 people sitting in that coach, in that train. So 4 of us were devotees, brahmacharis, and 2 were Bengalis, they were traveling, they were not devotees, they were drinking their morning tea. And they were shocked to see us chanting, because we were chanting like this, and one of us was chanting like this, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. he was like vigorously shaking his bead bag, and he was like hyper intense. And I was constantly looking at this couple. They were like, they were shocked. They were wondering what is happening. They couldn't understand, early morning, who would do that? And I looked at them, I looked at him. It was fun, but I was seeing they were very disturbed. And that man couldn't control himself. Finally asked me, Maharaj ji, unko kya ho gaya? What happened to him? I said, wo dhyan kar rahe, dhyan. Wo dhyan kar rahe. He was shocked. He couldn't believe that wo dhyan kar rahe. Because dhyan has to be peaceful. Spiritual life has to be peaceful. So sometimes, we call the struggle is needed. I'm not denying it. But there has to be some time in a day where you are peaceful without electronic gadgets around you. Anyway, so this is the first question they asked and the reason they explained. Now they'll ask the second question, which is also very interesting, which is text number 11. So I request all of you to repeat after me. Bhurini bhuri karmani Shrotavyani vibhagashah Ata sadotra yatsaram Samudhartya manishaya Brui bhadraya bhutana Yenatmasu prasidati.
There are many varieties of scriptures, and in all of them there are many prescribed duties, which can be learned only after many years of study in their various divisions. Therefore, O sage, please select the essence of all these scriptures and explain it for the good of all living beings, that by such instruction their heart may be fully satisfied.
Okay, so this is the second question. The first question was what? What will bring about the ultimate good for all people? Now the second question they're asking is, what is the essence of all the scriptures? See, there are many scriptures. There are many books of God, many books of religion, right? So in Kali Yuga, they already explained lifespan is short. If we start reading all the scriptures, lakhs and lakhs of verses, millions of shlokas, we'll go crazy. There are 108 Upanishads, and then there are 18 big Puranas, and you read all of them with thousands and thousands of verses, we'll go crazy. So they are very intelligent. They are telling Suta Goswami, tell us the essence of all these scriptures, so that these people in Kali Yuga, they don't have to worry about, because to understand the scriptures, you have to know Sanskrit. To properly learn Sanskrit, you need 12 years. Like one of our brahmachari, Nityananda Prabhu, one of my very dear friends, he went to learn Sanskrit in 2009 to Govardhan. So 2009, and he's entered so deep into it. He has done MA, BA, MA, PhD is doing now. It is 2021, 12 years ho gaya. Now he's just completed his entire mastery over the language. To become a full-fledged expert doctor, I think 7-8 years when you become. But to be an expert in Sanskrit, then now he can make his own verses, he can give proper understanding of the verses. But who has the time to give 12 years? It's not possible. And secondly, the number of verses, Mahabharata itself has 100,000 verses. I mean, who will sit and read all of them? And Kali Yuga is a time when we want everything quick. We want essence. We want short. Earlier they used to play cricket match. They used to play for 11, 12 days. There used to be no end. Then it became 5-day test match. Then people got bored with that. They said, we want 1-day match. Now 1 day is also too much. They want 20-20. Because people don't have patience. Once upon a time, cricket match used to be, the match will go on till the result is there. So there are cricket matches that have gone on for 10 days and 11 days. So there is one test match between England and South Africa, which went on for 11 days. So England was batting, they scored something like 700 runs, and South Africa scored 800 runs, something like that. And finally, England needed 45 runs to win. The next day morning, they could have come and they could have scored those 45 runs, and they had 5 wickets remaining. All of you follow, no, cricket little bit. Cricket is India's religion. So cricket example, everybody follows. So they needed just 45 runs to win. So next day morning, they could have come and they could have finished the match. They could have won the match. But when the match closed on the 11th day, they said, tomorrow we are not coming to bat because our ship is going to England. We are taking the ship now. We are going. So the match is called as draw. 11-day test match is called a draw. Means people could afford to play 11 days, 6 hours every day. Now you can't imagine 11-day test match. People have no patience. People have no time. And so what I'm trying to say is now is the time of fast, everything fast, even food, they want fast food. They don't want to study all the books for the exam. They'll say guide, 20 questions, coaching classes, training. There are some management books I used to read, thick books. So then I discovered something interesting on internet. There are experts, they know that we don't have patience to read all these management leadership books. So they study these books. They make a 5-page summary of that book. And then they make a book, which is a summary of 100 books. So if you buy that one book, it is like reading 100 books. And they charge a bomb. And people buy that book. Who will sit and read 100 books? And these guys read that one book, they make the summary in 5 pages, they give you the essence. So nowadays people want short videos. Gaur Gopal Prabhu, my friend, was telling me that, he makes these videos. And now they told him that you make shorter videos. People don't have patience to hear 5 minutes, 6 minutes. You make 2-minute videos. Means people have lost patience. When we came to spiritual life, initial days, we used to hear our Guru Maharaj giving lecture for 4 hours, 5 hours. There is one lecture in 2004 he gave on 2006 on Bhakti Tirth Maharaj. That lecture went on from 11:30 or something till 6:30 in the evening. In between, there was a 20-minute break for Kirtan. So such intense classes we used to hear. Now it is impossible to imagine. Now even if we sit, we need visual, we need something bombardment, we need something on the screen. I went to somebody's house and he took me to his room, but we had to go to his room through the hall of the house. And he's a devotee, but his brother is not a devotee. His brother was sitting on the sofa and watching the television. And television is something, the screen is something which pulls your eyes, even if you don't want to watch. In the airport, there's breaking news. There's always light just flashes. So I just looked, as I was walking to the room, in those few seconds, I saw the screen. In those 5 seconds, I must have seen some 100 images on the screen. Some MTV was going on. Some octopus came up with some 20, 30 colors flashing on the screen, and somebody shouting and something coming up. Some image, and this guy sitting like this, he was completely, like a zombie, and he was munching some chips. He had no idea what was going on. So then I realized, just to shake him up, just to make him excited, look at what this television company has to do, this channel has to do. They have to create so much of colors, image, stimulation. So spiritual life is not about stimulation. Spiritual life is about absorption. And to be absorbed, if you're looking for stimulation, you just get a dopamine kick. A dopamine kick is available through, when we are getting the notifications on our WhatsApp, Facebook. That has a dopamine chemical. It just that anticipation of pleasure. It's not even pleasure. That anticipation that there's something exciting coming up. So, like when you go on a slot machine, when you go to a casino and you gamble there, and as that thing starts rolling, that anticipation, what will happen now, that's called a dopamine kick. So we have all been used to that kick. So we are addicted to pleasure. We are addicted to that kick. But that is naturally available through exercise, through jogging, through a lot of other ways. But we don't want the natural way. We want it the artificial way. And constantly getting that kick is making us overstimulated. And that also, dopamine also releases. So excess dopamine also results in eventually overproduction of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which makes us completely inactive. It has the other side of the coin, that we don't realize. And people become completely inactive because you need a much bigger kick later on to stimulate you. So stimulation is not the solution for happiness. See, that can only give pleasure. But spiritual life is about happiness. Happiness is deeper satisfaction. And that comes in absorption, that comes in putting the mind at the ekagrita stage, not the vikshipta stage. Vikshipta is agitation, stimulation. So therefore, the sages know that people won't have patience. People will be all addicted to dopamine. So they want, okay, give us something essence, give us something short. So that's like the very important question, the second question that they've asked. So all of you are there so far? Okay, now the third question is very interesting. That is text number 12. Please repeat after me. Sutajanasi badram te Bhagavan Satpatam Pati Devakyam Vasudevasya Jato Yasya Chikirshaya.
All blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of Godhead appeared in the womb of Devaki as the son of Vasudeva.
So this is the third question. They want to know why Krishna appeared in the womb of Devaki as son of Vasudeva. Now, this is also a very interesting question. The sages already know the reason why Krishna took birth. They already know why Krishna appeared in this world. But they are asking this question because when they ask this question and then the Sutta Goswami is going to answer about why Krishna appeared, that question answer, the description about Krishna, they know will make everyone happy. And that is what they reveal in the next verse. Why they are asking this third question is revealed in text number 13. Tanna Shushrushamananam Arhas Anganuvarnitam Yasyavataru Bhutanam Shemaya Cha Bhavaya Cha.
O Sutta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and his incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas. For one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them.
So this is the reason why they're asking question about Krishna appearing as a son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because when we glorify Krishna, we hear about Krishna, Kshemaya cha Bhavaya cha, means we will be enlightened also, we will be uplifted also, and it will also be good for us. Because hearing and chanting about Krishna, why do we want to hear and chant about Krishna? Is because when we hear and chant about Krishna, we experience deep happiness more than the stimulating pleasures of a dopamine. Krishna gives satisfaction. There is a difference between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure is what is limited to the senses, eyes, ears, nose, sense, and touch. This can give us pleasure. But Krishna gives us happiness. Happiness is a deeper experience. See, even in this world, we can feel the difference between sensual and something deeper. I'll give a simple example. I was walking in the hanging garden some days back. So there are people walking on both sides. Some people walk clockwise, some people walk anti-clockwise. So when I was walking, one lady from the opposite side was coming and she was heavily perfumed. So as she crossed me, that, and it was an artificial, some perfume she had put. It was titillating to the sense of smell. It was good smell, but it was like an agitation. And after 3 minutes, as I was walking, I had a contrasting experience. They had just watered the plants there, and the water mixed with the earth, the fragrance of that mixed with the fragrance of the flowers. That fragrance entered my nostril. And now you can guess which of these two experiences must have touched me at a deeper level. The second experience, right? Because it is natural. So there is something that touches us at a deeper level. Like when you see rain on your electronic screen, you see a rain dance, a Bollywood song, the hero and heroine are dancing on a rain. Now you see the rain outside your window. What is the difference? What gives you more satisfaction? When you see something real, when you see the moon and the sky and the moon on an electronic screen. So the electronic screen just titillates you. It's something that is sensual, but there is a reality beyond senses. There is something that touches us at a deeper level. Like you see a forest on an electronic screen. And now sometimes I go to national, one day I was sitting in the national park in Borivali because I go to Gopal's Garden High School, which is next to the Borivali National Park. So in the mornings I would go there and I sat under one tree, and one man there, local man, told me that this tree is some 400 years old, a huge banyan tree. So I was sitting under that tree, and I remember at one point of time I suddenly felt I had an experience of, I'm feeling embarrassed to say this, but I don't want to, it's not like it happens always, but it was a kind of a spiritual experience in the sense, I was just sitting quietly, just being present, and suddenly I felt, that there is something in me that doesn't die, because the tree, if it is 400 years old, I entered a space of, wow, this tree has been there for 400 years. The tree has seen everything. And then suddenly I felt at one point of time that there is something within me also which doesn't die, which is like this tree. So I felt that self of mine connecting with the tree. And that's when I realized why people love to go to nature, why people love to go on a mountain trek, why people love to go to the ocean, why they like to go to the beach in the mornings for a walk, why people like to connect with nature, because nature seems eternal. And there is something eternal within us, which doesn't die with the body. And because we are also eternal, we don't die. Whenever we see something old, something very regal, like as a child, I remember I was very attached to my great grandfather, and I would just be with him. Somebody is timeless. Somebody doesn't die, because we also don't die. That's why we are attracted to something that is very old, because we are also very old in one sense. So the point I'm trying to say is that sensual experiences are limitations. So the sages are asking this third question about Krishna because they know that Krishna is eternal. And when we connect with Krishna, the soul will dance in joy. And they're very specifically saying, you tell us what you learned from your previous teachers. That is very important. See, it's very important to know that there is a tradition. And what the knowledge that comes on in tradition is very pure. Tradition has power. Tradition is different from superstition. We're not talking about superstition. We're talking about wisdom that is transferred. See, I got the realization under the banyan tree, okay? But I know that is confirmed with what the great sages have said in the scriptures. So that makes it authentic. Otherwise, it's mental speculation. See, if you have a gun, I shoot a bullet, the gun will fire it. If I take the bullet out of the gun and I hit you with the bullet, it may hurt you. But if you put that bullet in a gun or a revolver and then shoot, it has a greater impact. Similarly, what we speak is my knowledge, my wisdom. It's like hitting a person with a bullet, like a stone. But when you have acharyas, when you have saints from the last 5,000 years glorifying Krishna, their Shakti, their power, it's like the gun. So when you speak through that line of succession of sages, then the combined effect transforms the heart of the receiver. Therefore, we emphasize on this. That is why the third question is asked, that you are that person. So we will end with the 14th verse, which is the very important verse, and then we can take some 5 minutes of questions. And the 14th question is very important. They are now going to answer why we want to hear and chant about Krishna. This is the question they're going to ask. They are not going to explain why they've asked these 3 questions so far. Why they want to hear the answer to these questions. Why they want to chant about Krishna. That is answered in that is explained in the 14th question. Please repeat. Apanna sansmritim ghoram yannama vivasho grinan tata sadyo vimuccheta yad bibeti swayam bhayam.
Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified.
So now they have answered. See, they have asked 3 questions, and now they are saying why they have asked these 3 questions. They have asked these 3 questions because they want to hear and chant about Krishna. And now they're explaining why they want to hear and chant about Krishna, because even if we unconsciously chant Krishna's name, even if we unconsciously chant Krishna's name, all fear from the heart will go away, because the holy name is so powerful that even fear is afraid of the holy name. Okay, what we mean by fear is insecurity. Everybody has insecurity. We all have some insecurity, okay? The renunciants also have their share of insecurities. They may have given up the world externally, but they have their own fears and anxieties and insecurities. Grihasthas have. Those who have a house, they have. You have money, you have insecurities. Everybody has some fear. And especially ahara, nidra, bhaya, maithunam, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Defending is the most powerful of these 4 propensities of human beings. Everybody wants to defend. Everybody has fear. And therefore, the sages are telling Suta Goswami that please answer these 3 questions, because when we hear these questions and we chant Krishna's name, all fear will go away. I was reading 12th canto recently and I came upon this amazing shloka. Let me recall. Patitas kalitas charta kshutva va vivasho grinan harer nama iti uchcher muchyate sarva patakat. The Bhagavatam is coming to an end, and after 18,000 verses, as the Bhagavatam is coming to an end, Suta Goswami is saying the holy name is so powerful that patita, if somebody has fallen down to abominable activities, or skalita means he's not fallen down but he's slipping, he's soon going to fall. Patita, skalitas, charta, or somebody is in extreme distress, or shutva. Shutva means he's about to sneeze. We go through this akshi. So when you're doing Hare Krishna, you sneeze and you say Hare Krishna. Vivasho grinan. If you spontaneously chant Krishna during these 4 activities, you are fallen down, you are slipping, or you are in great distress, or you are sneezing, what will happen? Hare Nama. I offer my respect to this holy name, because Hare Nama iti uchcher. If you chant Hare Krishna, muchyate sarva patakat, all the negativities from your heart and mind will be wiped off. That is the power of the holy name, chanted unconsciously. What to speak of being chanted with feelings and emotions. So it is because of these reasons that they have asked these 3 questions. And they're also going to ask 3 more questions, which we will take next time, because today we are over time today, because I started a little late. But I'll stop here and take one question, and then next time we can continue with text number 15. Hare Krishna. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Rasik Govind Prabhu.
Dandavat, Prabhu. Thank you. Very, very nice and interesting class. It was very about the mind and how the functions of the mind and being calm and peaceful. So it's very interesting, Prabhu. I think we should share some more concepts and deeply about the Shishuta stage and the Ekantara stage. So you said this shifting the stage is not, it's natural because we are restless and sometimes so many things are going on, we cannot concentrate. So to be peaceful and be satisfied, be happy, you have to come to the Ekadita stage. So how do you rise, from the Shipta stage to the Ekadita stage where we are peaceful, we are more absorbed and all that? In a practical, scenario of a practical Bombay product.
You rise when you are convinced that you can be happy in a peaceful condition. See, I'll tell you, there is happiness in different stages. There are some people who are happy only, they think they're happy only when they're hyperactive. There are some people who are happy only in drinking liquor and taking drugs. So if we are convinced deeply that I will be happy only when I'm peaceful, then we can come to the Ekagrita stage. Our problem is deep within, we don't like to be peaceful. We don't want to be peaceful. We have been conditioned to be agitated always. Like when I told somebody, I was just sitting one day in the terrace and looking at the people tree and I was relaxing. So he came and told me, "What are you doing, Prabhuji?" I said, "I'm doing nothing." But what? I'm doing nothing. I said, "Yeah, I'm just relaxing." Acha, aisa, aapke paas free time bahut rehta hai kya? Well, no, I sometimes take out time to do nothing. So then he said, "What do you do when you're doing nothing?" I said, "Nothing means no electronic gadgets, nothing. Just sit and just allow the mind to wander." Prabhu, mind wander is dangerous. I said, everyone who wanders is not lost. Distracted mind is a problem, but wandering mind is not a problem.
Okay.
He said, you got the realization by doing nothing? Prabhu, अच्छा यार आप लोग ब्रह्मचारी है, कुछ करने को नहीं है, ऐसे बैठे हो आप doing nothing. I said, excuse me. I told him it requires lot of hard work to do nothing. It requires a lot of hard work to do nothing. Because we are agitated, we want constantly, in Harvard University, they did an experiment in 2015. I read this in Robert Ludwig's book called Organized Mind. His book is very big. The book is not organized, but the book is called Organized Mind. A very nice book. So he says about one experiment they did in Harvard University. They made people sit in a room and they told them that you have to press this button. So each person who pressed the button, they got a mild electric shock. And then they were told after that, next time if you are given this shock, would you go through this? They were, no. What if you are given a choice that you have to pay $10 or you get a shock? What would you prefer? Everybody said, we'll pay $10, but we don't want this shock. And the next day, the same participants were put in another room and they were told individually that you have to sit here, you have to sit alone in this room for 2 hours or something and do nothing. Just sit here. So, and by the way, that machine is also there. Remember that machine which you touched yesterday that gave you a shock? That's there. But we are just informing you. You just have to sit here for some time. But for your information, that machine is there. They said, okay. And you know what happened? 93% of the participants touched that machine at least once. They preferred that mild electric shock to sitting relaxed, doing nothing. And one man, believe it or not, kept fiddling that machine 197 times.
My God.
Means he preferred the agitation and the noise. The noise in his head must have been so loud. Means when you just become peaceful now, you hear that sound of your inner voice. We don't want to hear that. We want to deny that. So we want always to be busy. We have to be busy. Don't get me wrong. We have to, but if you want to be focused in your busy activity, then you have to also be relaxed. Because mind has two operating systems. Mind has task positive network and task negative network. Task positive means when you're reading, you should be, for 2 hours, you should be able to read without distraction. But right now when I'm reading, I'll also check my WhatsApp messages. So that distraction is fractured, that attention is fractured. I don't get the best benefits out of paying attention. Okay. This is one mode of network of the brain. The second is relax. When you relax, that time also the mind gets nourished. That's why, I don't know if you, in the olden times, when you used to read some novel or book, after 3-4 pages, we used to realize, I was not attentive. 3 pages I read, my mind wandered. That is a natural state of the mind. Mind is naturally wandering, and there's nothing wrong in it. Because that wandering mind also nourishes us, and concentration also nourishes us. But nowadays what has happened, when you're supposed to be concentrating, we are distracted. And then when you're supposed to relax, we don't know what is relaxation. So we are a very screwed up society. Our brains are completely messed up. We don't know how to relax. We don't know how to concentrate. So if you are convinced that different people experience in different ways. Some people think happiness means I have to take drugs. Some people think happiness means I have to watch cricket. If you are convinced that happiness means I have to be peaceful, then only you can be in Ekagrata stage. Otherwise, This is all theory. This will not be exciting at all.
Okay,
so if you are convinced, then universe will arrange situations for you to relax and be in peaceful state.
At least what you're saying is at least theoretically making a lot of sense in appeals. But it's like it's easier said than done. Even if you want to, because it's practice of so much of distraction already. The conditions already you already say so many true. You're already conditioned for getting so many things, and now you cannot. It's hard work to do nothing, as you said. It's like very true, Prabhu. So in the same sense, like you said, like Yoga Sutra says we are not the mind. So, but how can we disconnect? You said if we are not the mind, we can be away from the mind. We can be distracted, disconnected from the mind. But when you are absorbed in doing something, we cannot just the mind is involved, so we cannot say I am not the mind. Or how do you can reconcile these things? How do you reconcile that?
No, you don't have to see. This is called paralysis by analysis. Don't analyze so much. Once a caterpillar, once there was a insect. What is that worm which has 100 legs? Small legs. That worm was dancing.
Centipede.
Centipede. It has 100 legs, small legs. It was dancing. Another centipede saw that and said, "Wow, you dance so well." So this centipede said, "Thank you," and he continued dancing. So this other centipede said, "But I observed when you are dancing, your 64th leg comes in front of your 34th leg. How does that happen?" So when that question is asked, it is said that was the end of the good dancing by that centipede. Because he suddenly became conscious, started analyzing, aise kaise ho gaya, ye kaise ho gaya. Now, if you analyze too much, my mind, mind, I have to separate it. But when I have to concentrate, I'm supposed to be concentrating. Yes, when you're supposed to read, be absorbed. Mind is a tool. Just use the mind, get completely immersed in it. But when the mind is disturbed, you can see your mind is separate from you.
Okay, bro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry today, once again, I joined in late, but we'll end on time next time, 9 o'clock. And we'll start on time at 8 o'clock. Today, our Guru Maharaj had a meeting, and because of that, I got stuck. And just for one clarification, next Tuesday, 26th, I'm not sure if I'll be in Mumbai. So 26th morning, I will confirm. I'm supposed to come back to Mumbai on 26th, but I have a flight on 27th also. So I don't know. I'll just confirm on Tuesday morning. So thank you very much for your kind participation. Eager to see you again next week. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you.